You are listening to Into a Dream, two friends in conversation about all things intuition and dreaming.
Hi, I'm Peggy-Sue Honeyman Scott. I am a teacher, healer, speaker, and writer of all things intuitive.
Hello, my name is Tree Carr, and I'm a dreaming guide, a death doula, an author, and a psychic medium.
Episode 2, Death Becomes Us.
Since it's Halloween, and which really doesn't really mean anything to me, my brother, I had a death in the family. My brother died recently.
Yes.
And we had a chat about it, and he came to you, which was really cool, and gave me some messages, which was awesome. You're my happy medium friend. And which really made me happy. I mean, I haven't really been sad about him since, because I just know how happy he is. It's just, to me, it made made a lot of sense. A lot of people, I'm sure, will have a hard time, with that concept, but whatever works for you. But you said something really interesting that I just really haven't stopped thinking about. You said, maybe this is the dream and dying is waking up.
Yeah.
And I don't know where you got that from, but can you speak to that some more?
I think perhaps I use that analogy of death being actually an awakening because of just some experiences that I've had in lucid dreaming and also astral projection, out of body experiences, where my perception of reality seemed a lot more real and clear and vivid and present than actually my waking reality. So it feels as though my consciousness in those realms, the realms of lucid dreaming or out of body, astral, felt like hyper real and more real than this realm. And so I often kind of think that when our consciousness, if and when, and if it does disconnect from our bodies, when our bodies have deceased and no longer work or no longer serve their function, if our consciousness is therefore engaging in aspects or dimensions of the universe or the multiverse that are, much more clear and vivid, and we're much more awake and present. It's like a shifting of perception
And
of your
energy.
consciousness and energy.
So you're getting a taste of what it's like on the other side. Or is this the other side?
Yeah, I mean, is there any other side?
Exactly. Is there
maybe
any other
it's
side?
just layers of an onion, and there will always be another layer. Perhaps that's the beauty of the universe. I mean, I see the universe as a multiverse where there's infinite possibilities, and I also see the universe as kind of like the layer of an onion. There's always more. The nature of the universe is that it's expanding, and it's always expanding and evolving. It's the nature of our planet too. We just look around into nature, and you see that there's things evolving all around. We've seen species evolve over thousands of years and change and morph and evolve. And we see our seasons evolve and change. I see the universe very much like that. And these are laws of science, the ever-changing evolution. So I kind of see death as that. I just see it as part of an evolutionary process of consciousness. So beyond the body, there perhaps is another layer to go explore.
Absolutely. Many layers. And if we talk about it more, I just don't think death is talked about enough. It's always seemed so scary. And, when I was younger, it's just like old people died, and that seemed like a natural process, but it always seemed quite grim and scary. Whereas now I have a completely different perception of what it is. And I mean, I don't want to die, but I have no fear of death.
Yeah.
I will go at any time. I don't think it'll be hard for me, is what I'm saying. And you're also a death doula, so you help people with that transition.
Yeah, there's many different roles along the path to walking someone home. And that's how I see it. I see the role of a death doula, which is also, the word doula is a Greek word of women who serve. It's also used for birth, like birth doula,
Yeah.
which is a woman that helps serve the pregnant woman to deliver the baby into the world. Also, it's the word midwife is also used. So death midwife. Sometimes I'm called an end of life guide or end of life coach or death doula or death midwife. Sometimes we're called soul midwives. But yeah, so through the process of death and dying, walking someone home, there's like a lot. It's like it's kind of like the layers of the onion again. So they go through a lot. People who are dying and are end of life, they go through many layers of aspects of themselves, not just the biological deterioration of their body into it finalizing, like stopping life, but also all the psychological aspects, spiritual aspects, and emotional layers in which to navigate as well. So I kind of help in all of those,
So
layers.
is it a two-step process, five-step process? Is it a per person process?
It's per person because some people fight it all along the way
Yeah.
and they're not very happy about the fact that they're dying. Some people are they surrender to it, not in a morbid way, like, oh, take me now, I can't handle this life anymore, but they've made peace with themselves, or they've gone through the process of ego death, which is probably the biggest part of death and dying that hurts the most for people, is the death of their ego, which when I say ego, I mean they're like what they thought they were, their
Yes.
identity, their human construct, their story. What, I was a lawyer or I was a politician. What am I now? What is that? What does it all mean? I'm going to die. What was this all for? And sometimes some people find it very difficult to let go of that, their concept of self, when they realize that they are going to no longer be. So navigating death, it's multi-layered, and yeah, I'm there along the way to the point of when people are actually actively dying and they need, someone to hold the space for them as they're dying. So loving support in the room, holding hands, comforting touch, hugs. Sometimes it's practical help with the family, helping organize a memorial or a funeral.
But it's really
So
just helping them relax
yeah, being
and let go.
absolutely giving them the safe space that they can do that and feel comfortable doing that and have the difficult conversations if they want to, or sometimes you just joke around and just like create a good energy in the room
Yeah.
by introducing some humor. And really, it's like we are when we come into the world. The births are all different. You never know what it's going to be like. Some people have it's very difficult and laborious, and some it's like actually quite funny and the comical situations when they were born, and it's the same at end of life. But I really believe it's different in a sense where you can choose how you want to do. You can go out just in a loving surrender and making peace with those around you, or you can go out kicking and screaming. It's a very private thing, and it's up to you how you want to do it. I mean,
Yeah.
of course, it's not up to you if like an anvil falls on your head while you're walking down the street. Then you have no
Right.
choice there. But for the most part, if you're given a so-called death sentence, like you have pancreatic cancer and you have
Cancer. Yeah.
6 months to live, yeah, then you can choose how you want to do that, and that includes treatment. You could, if you want to do it the natural way, if you want to stay at home and be in the comfort of your home when you die, or if you want to die in hospice, or you have all these choices too. Just because you're dying doesn't mean that the institution is has to step in and like take over you, and you have no sovereignty over your body anymore and over yourself anymore. You can be conscious in all of the decisions you make all along the way to do it the way you want to do it. If you want to die at home in the bed with soothing music and your favorite books and movies, or however you want to do it, your pet is there, your dog or your cat, it's we do have rights in this world to go out the way we
Yeah.
want to go out.
And that's a concept I didn't really get until not that long ago, that you actually have a choice in how you want to do it. And this is the evolution of, I mean, when I was growing up, we never heard of death doula. That was weird. You know, that wasn't even a word that
Yeah,
we heard of. So it's quite empowering actually to choose, you know,
yeah,
how you want to go. It's cool. The other thing is just intuitively, I my brother actually said, you know, to his wife, I don't think I have much time left. Like intuitive, like he knew. And
mm,
how many of us really know, but we just don't let ourselves know that we know. Also, my father said he would never live to 50 and he died at 49.
wow.
So did he know, or did he bring that upon himself by saying it so much that he made it happen? I don't know. Would never know.
I
Um,
think intuition does
yes.
play a really big part. And there's also just a lot of phenomena around death and dying. When someone is actively dying, this interesting intuition kind of kicks in. Some people, it would seem as though they choose their time of death. There's a lot of case studies, and there's a really great book called The Art of Dying by Peter Fenwick, and in it is just full of case studies around deathbed phenomena. And when people are moving closer to death, all these interesting sort of, I guess, supernatural, but I call them natural
Hmm.
things happen, and intuition's a really big part of it. And I'll give an example. Someone's on their deathbed dying, they are holding on for their nieces and nephews to come and visit them. They've seen all the family
Hmm.
members, but they haven't seen their nieces and nephews. Nieces and nephews come, say goodbye and have a visit, and then they leave. And this person who's dying dies an hour later. It was almost as though, they were holding on for that visit, and then they left shortly afterwards.
Absolutely. That's happened so many times in my life with people I
Yeah,
know. Yeah.
these things happen. And then there's a lot of other intuitive things that happen around the deathbed. There's lots of case studies as well mentioned in this book, Art of Dying, where there's a grandmother who's sick in the hospital and she's ill. She's been there. Or sometimes they're not even in hospital ill. It could be someone who's completely healthy and they're driving down the street at night and they get in a car accident and they die. And a family member will wake up in the middle of the night with a dream that,
Yes.
that they've been
Uh-huh.
visited. Yeah, or an intuitive hit will come. They wake up out of nowhere at the dead of night with that relative on their mind and feeling like something happened. This happens quite a bit. And the realms of intuition seem quite strong between family bonds. So when there is death going on, it's almost as though other people in the family can sense it sometimes.
If they're open to it, yes. Yes. If they're, open to it. I mean, I think a lot of people, they'll get these intuitive hits and they'll just throw them off and go like, oh, I'm making that up, or that's crazy, or,
Or I'm being
and
paranoid.
yeah, I'm imagining,
Mm.
but it's being talked about more and more. So I'm hearing it a lot lately of people, getting visits of people right and they're like on the other side of the planet, and then they find out later that they died at a certain time, and then they had this. They went, oh my God, I felt that person, brush the side of my head or something at that time. I woke up and thought
Yeah,
about them, and
incredible.
yeah.
And also, it comes for the people who are a person who's dying. Sometimes their dream worlds change quite a bit in the month to weeks before they die. They might start having more dreams where they are about to catch a train, or they're going away on a holiday, or they start
Ah.
they start talking in these sort of metaphors too, like I'm going to go away on a trip, or I'm leaving soon, or they'll dream of relatives who've died. So a big one
Yeah.
is in this book, Art of Dying. And it's a kind of well-known fact in hospices that hospice workers, nurses, will know and be able to predict when a patient will soon pass away. And it's because they will say, oh, Mrs. Smith, she dreamt that her dead mother was coming to visit her in the dreams. So we suspect it'll probably be pretty soon now that she will pass away. So that's another phenomenon, is having dreams where you have deceased relatives coming to get you or coming to pick you up. And some people even see their deceased relatives in the room and
Mm-hmm.
visiting, and they're
Mm-hmm.
having chats with them. And so this is like a prompt for the hospice workers, like, I think she'll be passing away soon, or he will be passing away soon.
Yeah.
So these are more kind of phenomena that happens around death and dying. That's very little, it's not talked about, but you know what? It's common knowledge in hospices.
Yeah, and I'm sure nurses can tell us a lot, and doctors.
Absolutely.
But they're sworn to an oath. They're not supposed to talk about those things.
And also their role is a medical role.
Yes.
So there's, that's where the doula, the death midwife comes in, where you can have these conversations, and have, this connection with the person dying. So um, having conversations about, what they've experienced in dreams, or if they've had a vision, or if they have an intuition, then it's great for the doula to be able to fill that role, because often it can feel quite alienating, for people not to be able to express their feelings or emotions or experiences to medical staff.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times the dying don't really know what's happening, and I mean, I've helped a few people let go and transition, and I would just say, you know, just relax and follow the light. Just go to your loved ones, and
Yeah.
there is a relaxation in that, and breathe deeply and all that. I don't really know what I was doing, but it felt like the right thing to say and do at the time.
Yes,
And to
absolutely.
be able to give caretakers and family members these tools, they don't have to be a death doula and go to death doula school to do a few of these things that we're talking about, even if it's just holding someone's hand and saying, just breathe deeply and follow the light, or let go, or whatever, is way more than most people are just sitting there panicking, going, oh my God, they're going, like, I don't know what to do. And, you know,
Absolutely. One of the first things you learn in death doula training is that you cannot fix a dying person. You cannot fix them. They are going to die. You are there to hold them and hold the space for them and help them energetically along their journey. So there's no, oh my God, do I need to say the right thing? How do I say this? Sometimes there's just no words. You're just sitting there holding a hand or holding the space energetically. So it's very different than what we would think it would be. It's actually quite simple.
but I think a lot of people get, emotional, and there's a lot of sadness and disconnection with relatives, which is, it's all natural. I mean, the whole process is natural, and there is no one size fits all, like you said, like to do with births or deaths. It's all a natural process.
It is. And, hey, we've been dying for thousands and thousands of years. If there's one thing that we can do really well is die.
Yes.
It's something that's inevitable for all of us. It's part of our cycle here on this planet, the life cycle. And, women have been ushering in life at the beginning and helping people exit at the end for thousands of years. So this role actually isn't a new role. This is sort of an ancient role that women, partook in. And the reason why it's sort of the role isn't there anymore is because we moved more into a westernized, industrial, modern complex with our society. So we've become more alienated from death. So when someone gets sick, they get whisked away really quickly to hospital or hospice. Everything's behind closed doors or curtains, and it's all hushed and tense, and we don't really see it. It's all kind of swept away, and then someone dies, and we don't connect with the process of death anymore because we've left it to the middleman, which is, the medical system. But really, not too long ago, people were still dying at home, and it was the relatives that were there to hold the space, and people's bodies would be at home for like 3 days. 3 days,
Yeah.
and people would come visit and pay their respects or have a wake. And there's something really important about that, actually. When someone dies, it's really important for people to be able to see the body if they want to, and to grieve over the body if they so feel like it. Something happens when you have 3 days in which to sort of get the grief out and really be with the person who's passed. It makes bereavement so much easier. And actually, there's studies that have been done where, compared to a person who's been with the body for 3 days,
Mm-hmm.
compared to someone who's abruptly, the body was taken away and there was no closure. It's harder for the people who've had their loved one whisked away, and their grieving process is longer than those who've been able to take their time over 3 days with family coming in and visit and being able to be with their loved one's body.
No,
So,
these days we don't get 3 days. That's they take them away for sanitation reasons or whatever. And I mean, I was in the hospital with somebody a few years back, who died, and there was a group of us who surrounded her bed and were there just for a couple of hours. And then we got pushed. They were like, we need to get it. We need to get her out. We need to get. It was like, wow, just calm down. She's not going to go anywhere.
I know, and this is the big myth too. You can keep the body for 3 days at home. You can. It doesn't, there's this whole thing about, oh my God, it's going to start like rotting straight away.
Decomposing.
Yeah, no, it's like 3 days is fine, and like there's ways in which you can die at home, and as doulas, we prepare the body after the death, and there's like ice packs that you put on the abdomen, and there's ways you wash the body, and it's a very loving and very sacred
Ceremony.
process.
It's a ceremony.
Yes, and because I really do believe, and the Buddhists think this as well, and lots of traditions think this, that for 3 days, well, the Buddhists think it's longer because you're going through the bardo, and that's the whole experience of the death process. But the person's almost like their energy is still around. The energy is still
Yes.
liminal. It's liminally still around. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it takes a while for the consciousness to, okay, I'm good. Stay around in this plane just a little bit. That's why that 3-day process is really healing. It's very, very healing. But yeah, it's a big myth that, oh, they're going to start rotting straight away. It's going to turn into like some zombie situation. It's like, no, it's not. You can keep the body in the right conditions, in like a cool room and whatnot. You can keep the body and have it for wakes and whatnot. It's just a more humane,
Well, they just
compassionate,
keep them
human loving way.
in the freezer at the morticians anyway.
Yeah,
I mean, it's the
I
same
know.
thing.
Yes. Yeah.
But I got to say, for I've seen a few people's, I've been a few, seen a few people, in the caskets and all that. And quite honestly, for me, I would rather not see them, because it's every time I think of them, that's the last picture in my head of them, and it's just, some of them are disfigured from accidents, or they just don't look the same, and it's
Yes.
for me, I really don't want to see that. I'd rather just go through, if it's going to take longer, but that's me.
Yeah. So for some other people, they feel they need closure. So it's nice to be able to have that option for families. And then also another choice is we don't all have to be embalmed. A lot of people think that, oh, as soon as you die, then you have no choice about what's going to happen to your body afterwards. No, you totally do. You don't need to be, embalmed if you don't want to. You can have a green, an eco-friendly style of burial. You can get buried without the chemicals pumped into your body, the preserving chemicals of formaldehyde.
Hmm.
You can just go naturally into the earth in a natural coffin that will decompose. You can,
Oh,
there's
but
so
that's
many
probably
different
very
ways.
inexpensive compared to a big
It
old
is. It
pine
is.
casket.
Absolutely. I mean, people make, sometimes cardboard caskets, or they just wrap them, they get wrapped in shrouds, like cotton shrouds, and then placed in the earth. And there's special eco, green, friendly burial sites too that
Gosh,
will
yes, in
acknowledge that.
England. In England, I
Yeah.
just read about these new young girls who are taking over the funeral businesses in doing this whole eco, environmentally, inducive way, which I was a bit shocked at that. In America, it's far more strict.
Oh,
The
but
rules there
change
are,
is coming. Change is coming
yes, it is.
because I'll tell you one thing: money, money talks, and funerals put a lot of families into funeral debt. It
Yes.
costs thousands and thousands to have the casket, the embalming, the whole process. Even having your loved one in the freezer costs, like, you have to pay rent on that. Like, it's so many people are in funeral debt, but then these eco options are so affordable. They're really affordable. They're more affordable than cremation sometimes. I mean,
Really?
it costs about like 10 grand to get cremated, 7 grand to
Oh
10 grand.
my
And
gosh.
yeah, like pounds here in the UK. But that's, so that is another whole thing that's changing. And also, the funeral business is harsh on the environment. Even cremation is just like all the pollutants going up into the atmosphere. And then with funeral directors, with the embalming process, that's like blood going into our waste system, because you have to get the blood all out of the body.
Oh,
And then you pump it through
Lord.
the chemicals. Yeah, so it's just really, it's going to really change. And, we need to make it more affordable for families to be able to have their loved ones rest in peace, instead of leaving huge debts for families. But yeah, that's all changing. I mean, the whole embalming thing is it's archaic, really. I mean, it came about in the during the Civil War, when there were loads of casualties and loads of bodies piling up. Some whole families were completely killed. So
Yes.
you'd have, no one could. There was a surplus of bodies at home, and there was nowhere to put the bodies, and it was really stressful for a lot of towns. So that's when the middleman of a funeral director popped up on the scene, and then people they took the surplus of all the extra dead bodies from the war. So that's where that all came in. So we're going way back when. But I do think that this stuff is all going to evolve and change as we become more climate conscious and more environmentally conscious, and also just money, economics. People can't afford that shit anymore.
Yeah. I had no idea it was that expensive. I mean, some people save up and have a savings account for their funeral, or these funeral people come around and, ask old people if if they have enough money ready to deal with that, which I think is like, an old used car salesman trick.
Totally. And it's
Feels
so
like such a
old
ripoff.
school. I know. And like even just getting like a gravestone done and the engraving, like everything.
Oh yeah.
And you don't even need that, right? You can die in a creative way. You can have a tree planted, or you could have a plaque, a bench with a plaque on it. Or there's more creative ways in which you can have a little landmark here on planet Earth, if that's what you so want.
Yes, but
You
this
don't.
is why it needs to be talked about now, because, way before you think you might die, because um, when it does happen, it can be a shock, and you are escorted into making decisions that you know nothing about when you're, you know, grieving. And
Yes.
that's happened to me, and it was horrible. I made these decisions I wish I never made, because I was told that I needed to make the decisions in a day, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
couldn't think straight. And
Yes.
I think it's something to
This,
talk about. Like at 18, let's talk about this. Birds
yeah,
and the
let's talk
bees,
about death.
death
Death should be talked about, like it should be taught in school, just like
in
sex
schools.
education. Yeah. So, you
Yes,
have sex education, you should have death
death
education.
education.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a part, this is a massive part of our life. Why is it so taboo and swept under the carpet? The more we talk about it, the less it becomes the boogeyman in the closet. It's more out in the open, and it can be a positive thing. And I'm such a big advocate for death positivity. You can turn it around so it doesn't have to be this scary thing to look at. And you can make, an enjoyable process too. I know that sounds weird to say, but planning
No.
your own funeral, you could put your own imprint on it. I think that's where the death doula comes along. Like in your situation where you're like, you had to make a decision in one day and it was really stressful, where death doula would come in and say, look, you have options. You don't need to make the decision in one day. You can do, you can do it differently. How, if you don't have a big budget, you can do it in a very modest way. So a death doula can help with the practical matters as well when it comes to aftercare when someone has died. And often people don't know that they have these choices. So the death doula can step in and say, well, no, you do have choices, make it less mysterious, basically.
I see some businesses sprouting from this conversation.
Yes.
Take it and run. Change the business, people.
I'm just happy
Well,
about changing people's lives, so that the grieving process isn't hard for them, because who needs all this other shit when you're grieving and all of a sudden you have to fill out death certificates, and it's not just one,
Hard.
it's many
Hard.
death certificates, because you have to hand them into different institutions and whatnot. One's not enough, and
So when you should be grieving, you're doing this, paperwork.
yeah, so death doula helps with, practical stuff too after death.
Well,
So it's not
how
just,
much is a death doula? How much does that cost for that?
well, I think it's just based on a person by person basis. So I've done stuff that was just compassion work, where someone didn't have any budget at all. I've done one-off consultations, and I've done, longer. But you have the conversation with the person, because it's different by case study, really. And also their needs are different. So with some people, you might just do help with the aftercare stuff, planning the funeral and planning and helping with the paperwork. Where with other people, it's from the beginning to the end, and then the
Sure, and
aftercare.
it could take months.
That's right.
So how do you? I'm not trying to find out how much you charge and what your rates are, but how would one plan for that if you don't know how long it's going to take and what your needs are
How would one plan for that? So if you knew that
financially?
financially, well, that's where you sit down and have a conversation. You say, well, I could be here for you on a weekly basis, or I could be here for you on a day-to-day basis. If it's a day-to-day basis, then it would be, you'd be on a salary, so hired, obviously privately, and then paid a salary to be with them like every day for, however long the process is. But some people just need it like maybe once a week, like a once a week checking in, and then you would work out your cost based on that, so you get paid by the day, because you were with them for the one day. So you really need to have these very transparent and honest conversations with the people that you're helping, and also what they're able to afford too, because you don't part of this help is that you don't want to burden the family with more debts, because it's already a stressful time.
Yes, and I don't think anybody's ever prepared for it, really. I mean, unless the conversations are ongoing and more like they are talking about going to the gym or going to yoga.
Yes, yeah, it can be a very transformative process, death.
Yes, death becomes us.
It does.
Well, I that was very interesting conversation. I learned a lot already, and I hope a lot of other people to get some insight on what the options are for
Yeah.
their upcoming death.
Yeah, and also it's because it's Halloween, and also Halloween and the Day of the Dead. This season is always, there's a lot of death themes. So the
Mm-hmm.
31st to the 2nd of November, it seems like those 3 days are like a window of time where the theme is death. And all around the world, you have people acknowledging ancestors. So we have like All Hallows Eve, All Saints Day, Halloween, the Day of the Dead. And all around the world, there's people celebrating traditions that honor those who died, their ancestors, and our loved ones who have died. And so I find that this time of year, it's a really lovely time to honor your ancestors, honor those that you love who've died, and to hold them in your heart in remembrance. And there's
And
things that you can do.
that's a much I love that way more than trick or treating.
Yeah.
Getting candy from people. it's the honoring of the dead. That's a whole nother take on it.
It's wonderful. And some
Beautiful.
cultures are really good at doing that. The Mexican culture has a rich history of the Dias de Muerte, and there's visiting of the grave sites and bringing gifts and honoring their ancestors and loved ones who've died. I think we could, adopting this more celebratory aspect of death and dying would really benefit a lot of us in bringing the joy and the celebration of people's lives. There's ways in which you can do this on your own, just honoring your loved one who's passed away, just in silent meditation or reflection somewhere in nature or somewhere quiet in your home, or getting out old photographs and putting them up or looking at them. And it can be very healing, a very healing process. And this time of year, as a medium, we see this time of year as very, the veil is quite thin between worlds, and there's more access to those who've passed on the other side. And that's kind of believed in a lot of different traditions, that those 3 days in particular is very special energetically for connecting with loved ones.
Yeah, just because they've passed on doesn't mean they're not still there, or the energy of them is there. One of my teachers,
Yeah.
I just remember this, I really love this idea, is that he said when you die, you're it doesn't just go into blackness. Your molecules break up and they disperse throughout the world, the universe, whatever. And so if you think you're missing, so he says, I'll say, like, what do you miss about that person? Oh, I miss how kind, how he, said kind words to me. Okay, he said, so if you look in your life, is there someone else who says kind words to you? And you can look and you go, oh yes, my friend Joe always says kind words to me. So there's nothing ever missing. All you have to do is
Mm,
look and see that it comes in a different way. And
yeah.
I love that. So it's sort of like the molecules have gone into another person, or they were already there, or whatever. But
Wow, that's really interesting. That reminds me a lot of this news story that just recently got published about a woman, a 23-year-old woman named Chastity Patterson from the States. And her dad died like 4 years ago, and she had been sending text messages to her dad's phone number every single day for like the last 4 years, just giving life updates. And she did this so she could feel more connected to him, and it helped her with her grief. And then, to her surprise, on the 4th anniversary of her dad's death, someone replied, and it was a man called Brad, and he said he had been reading her messages for years, and he had not contacted her until this last emotional text message that she had sent. And he revealed himself, as a father himself, and that he, in fact, had lost his own daughter in a car crash around the same time that her dad died. So, an amazing story of like what you were explaining here, Peggy-Sue, is almost like the molecules, almost as though something that we've lost and the molecules, get dispersed. That loss ended up, of her dad ended up somehow transferring over to this man, Brad, who had suffered loss too of his daughter. So, a very healing example of transference in a way, where Brad served a lot of help for her with the grief of her loss of her dad, whereas it was vice versa. He lost his daughter, and Chastity ended up fulfilling that sort of connection. An amazing story. I love stories like that.
and it reminds me of when I was in Mexico many, many years ago when I was 18 years old, and I was at this sort of vegetarian spa, and this somebody told us to go lay on this rock by the stream and look at the clouds and stare at them, and we could make them, make them disappear, watch them disappear, they said. And so I remember I went and I think I was there for, I don't know how many hours, a long time, just watching cloud after cloud disappear. And when you hold an energy of, trying to make the cloud disappear, it does. You pick small clouds to start with, right? And what happens in the end is when you're staring so much is that you start seeing the molecules. You can see them. The little
Amazing.
tiny movements. Yeah. So that's another exercise to do to strengthen your intuition. And it's so simple to do. And it's
So
fun.
you just lay there and just basically observe clouds.
Yeah, you just pick a cloud and you go, okay, you just think,
I'm going to dissolve that cloud.
I'm going to dissolve that cloud right now. And all of a sudden it just goes, it just goes. You go, wow, that was fun. Let me try this one over here. And
That's great.
and then because you can't believe that you're going, am I doing it or is it the wind? But trust me, just play with it. It is so much fun. And then when you see the molecules, because they're fleeting, they come in and out, right? When you're really relaxed and you're just looking and you're connected with the clouds, you can see them sort of in between. Then you realize that we are just, there is a thin veil.
That's wonderful. I'm going to try that.
Yeah, it's a good exercise to do. It's very relaxing too.
Yeah, it sounds very meditative, very relaxing.
That's a little off the subject of death, but it's it's death of a cloud, I guess.
Well, it's like practicing like dissolvement, which is
Yes.
which kind of in shifting and changing, and they're all themes of death, really, aren't they?
Yeah, I guess death is a dissolving.
Yeah. So getting back to what you had said at the beginning, how is life the dream, and when you die, is that when you really wake up? I guess this is the big mystery, and that's what we all want to know and want to find out. And maybe some of us are even afraid to find out. But one thing I do know, I think, is watching family members and loved ones of those who have died. The act of dying and the act of death and losing someone does in some kind of way wake you up. So it wakes up the living. So I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Peggy-Sue, but losing someone close to you does have a real sobering effect sometimes, and you sometimes get very activated and you wake up to yourself. Sometimes you wake up to deeper things, more profound things, existential ideas, or even spiritual awakenings can happen when people around us who we love die.
Well, I've had a lot of friends die this year, and I get a little sad, but I tell you what, it makes me want to live more.
Yeah.
It makes me want to make every day count. And that's waking up for sure.
You've been listening to the Into a Dream podcast. Join us next time for more conversations with Peggy-Sue Honeyman Scott and Tree Carr